All right, today we're going deep into a worldview where blockchain isn't just about making money, it's about faith. We're going to look at how some specific cryptocurrencies on the Pulse Chain network are being seen as, believe it or not, tools for building a whole new kind of society, one where every single transaction is a moral choice and every digital coin is a statement of belief.
So let's just jump right in with that big provocative question. Can buying a cryptocurrency actually be an act of faith? I mean, is it really possible for a computer code on a blockchain to represent some kind of deep, moral, or spiritual commitment? Let's unpack how this whole belief system tries to answer that question with a very confident yes.
You know, this quote right here, it gets to the absolute heart of the matter. What it does is it completely shifts the conversation away from all the typical crypto arguments, about who has the fastest transaction speeds or the lowest fees. Instead, it pulls the focus onto ultimate purpose. The technology, the chain itself, that's just seen as a tool, a means to a much, much higher theological end.
Okay, so to really get the why behind all this, we first have to wrap our heads around the worldview it's all built on. And at its core, it is a belief in a kind of cosmic conflict, a battle between two fundamentally opposed systems.
And look, they're not just speaking in metaphors here. The sources we're looking at describe a literal spiritual war that's playing out in our economic and our political structures. You see, in this view, every financial transaction, every law, every single institution is seen as belonging to one of two sides in this massive battle for control.
So on one side of this battle, you've got what they call the beast system. This is basically their term for the world's current financial structure. Think about fiat currency, right? Money that can be printed out of thin air, which creates what they call invisible theft through inflation. It's a system that they say is built on endless debt and centralized control, all summed up with the biblical term for fraud, dishonest weights.
And then, on the other side, you have the alternative they're proposing, the covenant system. Now, this isn't about trying to fix the old system. Not at all. It's about building a parallel society completely from scratch. Its foundation is based on ancient biblical principles, like Jubilee economics, which is the periodic cancellation of all debts, and an absolute, non-negotiable demand for integrity, for honest weights and measures.
So yeah, the contrast between these two systems, it could not be more stark. One is basically designed to run on never-ending debt. The other is built around the idea of Jubilee, or debt release. One is all about centralization and control by a handful of people. The other is about the sovereignty of individual families and communities. It's a fundamental clash of how the world should operate.
So you might be asking, why now? What's the rush? Well, according to this very specific interpretation of end times prophecy or eschatology, we are living in what's called the little season. This is described as a specific period of history where the deception of that beast system has gone global and its power is at its absolute height. This creates a profound sense of urgency, a feeling that they need to build its alternative before the old system comes crashing down.
So if you believe the world is this hostile place, dominated by a failing system, what's the response? You don't try to patch it up. According to this framework, you build an ark.
The whole strategy here is about preservation, not protest. The goal isn't to fight the old system, it's to create a self-sufficient, parallel civilization that can actually survive the collapse of the mainstream world. It's about building a lifeboat, a kind of spiritual and technological ark to carry a remnant of the community through the coming storm.
And this whole ambitious blueprint, it actually has a name, Nation OS. It's described as a decentralized operating system for this parallel society. But it's not just software, you see. It's a complete framework, blending theology, economics, and community governance into a real, tangible plan for a totally new way of life.
Now, what's really crucial to get here is that this is not about some big political takeover from the top. The Dominion Mandate, as they call it, is interpreted here as a grassroots thing. It's all about individuals and families taking responsibility and building from the ground up, starting with their own homes, then their communities, and then creating their very own economies. And this is where it gets really practical. They have something called the pHIAT framework. It's basically a model for taking back sovereignty in 5 key areas of your life: property, health, income, assets, and time. For each one, it lays out a kind of roadmap to move away from state or corporate control and toward personal, covenantal stewardship.
So, once you have these sovereign households, what's next? Well, you've got to connect them. And you do that with a sovereign economy, one that's rooted in an ancient and, honestly, a pretty radical concept called Jubilee.
You know, the entire economic model is built on this one single, non-negotiable principle from the book of Deuteronomy. This idea of honest weights and measures is the absolute gold standard. In this view, any system that allows for currency manipulation or debasement, well, it's just fundamentally immoral.
And that core principle of honesty, it really comes to life in what's called Jubilee economics. It's based on this ancient biblical practice where the entire economy had a built-in societal reset button. Periodically, all debts were designed to be completely canceled. I mean, think about how radical that is in a world built on compounding, never-ending debt. It's a system founded on mercy and release, not on endless obligation.
But of course, this brings up a huge question for us today, right? It's one thing to talk about physical scales and metal weights in the ancient world, but what does an honest weight even look like in a digital, programmable, and often very centralized financial system?
And that question, well, that's what brings us to the how. This is where we see ancient theology get translated literally into modern cryptography. This next part is all about how these abstract spiritual principles are being embedded directly into the code of specific digital currencies.
So the proposed answer to that question of a digital honest weight is something called pDAI. It's an algorithmic stablecoin that lives on the Pulse chain network. Now, algorithmic just means its value isn't backed by dollars sitting in a bank somewhere. It's maintained by pure code and math. The crucial thing to understand here is that its supply is governed by math, not by some central banker who can just decide to hit print. It's designed to be a unit of exchange that is, as they put it, a digital scale that cannot be tampered with.
Okay, but any stable currency needs a solid foundation, right? It needs something real backing it up. In this system, that's where pWBTC comes in. This is basically Bitcoin that's been technologically wrapped so it can operate on the Pulse chain network. It acts as the hard money collateral, the digital gold that backs this entire parallel economy. It's described as the ark that holds and protects the whole system's value.
So you put these two together, and what you get is what's being called the covenant stack. You've got pWBTC, the redeemed store of value, acting as that foundational ark. And then you have pDAI, the community's honest weight, which is the stable currency you actually use day to day. Two totally distinct assets, but they work together to create a self-contained economic ecosystem.
All right, so when you put all these pieces together, you arrive at a really powerful conclusion. Within this whole framework, choosing where you put your money is no longer just a financial decision. It gets completely reframed as a profound moral and ethical choice, one with real spiritual consequences.
And this quote right here really sums up the ultimate thesis of this whole worldview. Participating in this parallel economy, specifically by holding an asset like pDAI, is seen as a moral declaration. It's presented as a conscious, active decision to pull out of a system they see as corrupt and to actively help build one based on integrity.
So, we're going to leave you with this final question to think about. When technology gets loaded with this much theological meaning, when computer code is literally intended to enforce a spiritual covenant, what is the real currency being exchanged? The sources suggest it isn't pDAI, it's not Bitcoin, it's not even gold. The currency that truly survives is faithfulness, mercy, and community. Something to chew on.